Hey everyone, welcome back. We've been getting a ton of requests to do an explainer on mob lynching under the brand new BNS. And you know what? That is exactly what we're going to get into today. We are looking at how India is completely overhauling its legal approach to one of the most devastating and complex crimes out there, mob lynching. For decades, the legal system seriously struggled to even categorize, let alone prosecute, these acts of collective violence. But with the rollout of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or BNS, in 2023, the whole landscape has radically changed. We're going to break down exactly what this new law says, how it completely shakes up the old colonial-era rules, and what it actually means for justice on the ground.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our quick roadmap for today. First, the Kerala lynching case. Second, the old law's blind spot. Third, we'll unpack BNS Section 1032. Fourth, causes and new procedures. And finally, will the law work?
Part 1. The Kerala lynching case.
So, what actually happened in Palakkad, Kerala, on the evening of December 17, 2025? It's a date that honestly dragged the grim reality of vigilante justice right into the spotlight of the legal system. While, according to the police FIR and court docs, at around 7:40 p.m. that night, a man named Ram Narayan Bajal was brutally attacked. He was a 40-year-old guy originally from Jharkhand, just a poor, unemployed man who had traveled all the way down to Kerala hoping to turn his luck around. But instead, he was targeted in broad daylight. A mob literally ganged up with a shared intention to do away with him. And tragically, he lost his life. When the bail hearings for the accused reached the Kerala High Court, the judge actually used these exact words, calling the whole incident, quote, exceptional but heart-wrenching and shocking. Pretty heavy words, right? But here's where the legal reality gets super complicated. Despite the judge acknowledging how horrific this crime was, several of those suspects actually walked out on regular bail after spending just 25 to 43 days in judicial custody. And this right here brings us to a massive legal tug-of-war. On one side, you've got the prosecution fighting the bail, basically arguing, hey, releasing suspects early in a severe mob lynching case completely derails our investigation. But on the flip side, the court leaned on a really fundamental legal principle. Remand is not a punishment. Because the suspects cooperated and witness statements were already logged by a magistrate, the court ruled they couldn't just lock them up indefinitely before a trial. It's a perfect example of how real-world justice is constantly trying to walk this tightrope, balancing the sheer gravity of collective violence against individual legal rights.
All right, Part 2. The old law's blind spot.
To really grasp why these cases have been such a nightmare to prosecute, we have to look back at the history. For over 150 years, India relied on the colonial-era Indian Penal Code of 1860. And the shocking truth? The IPC completely lacked any specific definition for mob lynching. Zero. If a mob killed someone, cops literally had to cobble together generic laws, like Section 302 for murder and Section 147 for rioting, just to try and build a case. Now skip to the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita of 2023, and it explicitly calls out mob lynching as a unique, hate-driven crime. So, the crucial point is that this lack of a specific law had some severe consequences. Relying on basic, unlawful assembly rules meant hate crimes were massively underreported, and prosecution rates were just abysmal. The old setup totally failed to capture the deadly, societal aim of vigilante justice. It essentially treated a targeted mob execution exactly the same as a random street brawl. And as you can imagine, that seriously undermined public trust in the legal system's ability to protect vulnerable communities. Which leads us to Part 3, BNS Section 1032 Explained. Okay, I want you to burn this number into your brain. 5. Under this new legal framework, 5 is the magic number. For a crime to officially be stamped and prosecuted as mob lynching under the BNS, you legally need a minimum of 5 people involved. Let's look at the exact text of BNS Section 1032. It says, an offense occurs when a group of 5 or more persons acting in concert commits murder on specific discriminatory grounds. This is a total game changer. By codifying this, the law makes mob lynching a cognizable, non-bailable, and non-compoundable offense. In plain English, cops can arrest you without a warrant, bail is definitely not a right, and you absolutely cannot just settle the matter privately outside of court. But what exactly are those discriminatory grounds? The law is super specific here. Race, caste, or community, sex, place of birth, language, or personal belief. And guys, this is absolutely crucial. For the first time, the Central Criminal Code is officially recognizing identity-based hate crimes. It shifts the whole narrative from seeing these as just random, isolated incidents of violence to recognizing them as calculated attacks on constitutional ideals meant to intimidate entire communities.
And because the crime is now recognized as uniquely devastating, the punishment matches that severity. If found guilty, every single member of that mob faces the exact same potential sentence: death or life imprisonment, along with a fine. Think about that for a second. It doesn't matter who actually struck the fatal blow. If you were part of that group of 5 or more acting in concert, you are fully on the hook.
Moving on to part 4, root causes and new procedures.
Now that we understand how the crime looks on paper, how are the police actually instructed to handle it out on the streets? And this brilliantly illustrates the shift we're seeing. What we're looking at here is an actual standard operating procedure, or SOP, document from the Puducherry police. It's designed specifically to guide officers on how to apply the BNS. What's super fascinating to me is that this police SOP explicitly lists out the recognized root causes of mob lynching. They are directly confronting the socio-political realities. Authorities officially recognize factors like mob psychology, political patronages, administrative failure, rumors on social media spreading misinformation, and issues surrounding cattle protection laws. Simply acknowledging these triggers is a massive first step toward actually doing some preventive policing. And alongside the substantive law of the BNS, we've also got some major procedural upgrades through the BNSS, the Bharatiya Nagarik Structure Sanhita. Basically, to fix those old investigative blind spots where evidence was routinely tampered with, the new playbook demands practical steps. We're talking registering EFIRs, mandatory video recording of crime scenes to lock in immediate evidence, heavily utilizing digital evidence like mobile footage, and, this is a big one, implementing strict witness protection protocols given the high risk of intimidation by these large mobs. Finally, part 5, will the law work? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is despite all these shiny new upgrades, there's a pretty critical ambiguity hiding right in the text of the law. BNS 10032 requires the mob to be acting in concert. But here's the catch. That specific phrase is not defined anywhere in the BNS. Legal experts are already flagging this as a massive loophole. Defense lawyers will inevitably jump on this, arguing that individuals in a chaotic crowd were not legally acting in concert with anyone, which could make nailing down that group liability conviction incredibly difficult. And that ambiguity feeds right into the lingering enforcement hurdles on the ground. Think back to that Palakkad case we started with. Even with a brand new law, the police still face the immense difficulty of identifying specific faces in a chaotic, swarming mob. Plus, we still suffer from pretty poor forensic infrastructure to process all that digital and physical evidence. The burden of proof remains incredibly high, and as the police SOP itself noted, the risk of political intervention remains a very harsh reality in cases of communal violence. Which leaves us with this final, vital question. Is simply codifying the crime into law enough to deter vigilante justice if we don't also see deeper societal change? Don't get me wrong, the BNS is undeniably a massive leap forward. It finally puts a name to the crime and gives police the tools to fight it. But at the end of the day, a law is only as strong as the system that enforces it and the society that upholds it. Can a new legal section really patch up deep-rooted community divisions or stop the rapid spread of digital misinformation? Well, that is something I definitely encourage you to keep researching and thinking about as this new legal era unfolds. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.